The Chargers defense must improve if they're going to meet their lofty expectations in 2023, and Derwin James is calling upon the players in the locker room to get it fixed.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer. We've been covering the Chargers together for 8 seasons now, but this is our 6th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen today. And to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, today we're going to get into Derwin James calling out the defense, telling everybody that, hey, we got everything we need to make the improvements that we need to have in 2023. And then we're going to get into some things that we're a little bit concerned about. What form of J.C. Jackson are we going to see? And can the Chargers get that running offense together in 2023?
That'll be huge. I mean, both of those things I think are big question marks at this point, with reasons to feel good about it and also some reasons to be concerned going into the season because, hey, we have a game on Sunday. Everyone should be very excited. But today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. David, there was a story that came out from Jeff Miller of LA Times where Derwin James gave a little bit of an exclusive interview, or at least a couple of exclusive quotes, where he seemingly is calling out the defense. This is what he said. A bunch of grown men coming together. We're not kids. We're not little boys. When a bunch of grown men make up their minds and that they're tired of something, that's when things change. And it seems to me, David, that he is taking a little bit of the heat off Brandon Staley here, rightfully or wrongfully so. But it seems like he's saying, hey, at a certain time, the buck stops with us. It's going to be up to the grown men that are in this locker room. If this defense that has really underachieved the first couple of seasons under Staley can't get it together in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I like it a lot. I like the fact that one of your leaders is kind of speaking up and saying, hey, guys, the coaches, they call the plays, but it's up to us to go out there and execute. It's up to us to make the difference on the field. We're the ones that are on the field. We're the ones that are going to make the difference one way or another. And it's one thing for someone to say this. It's another thing that is coming from Derwin James. And I think those words, they resonate a little bit more. We know that he is one of the leaders of the organization. And so when he says something like this, I think it tends to resonate a little bit more with the players and the coaches in this organization.
And at the end of the day, it's going to fall on Staley, right? Good or bad, how this defense performs is going to fall on Staley. And when you have the kind of stars that this defense has with Derwin James and Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, to name a few, it's always going to look bad if you underachieve. And a lot has been talked about, Brandon Staley getting the right guys here. Jeff Miller talks about the transition going from a very simple defense under Gus Bradley and now going to a much more complex one under Brandon Staley and what that learning curve has been like. But at the end of the day, no one's scared of the Chargers defense. They might be scared of individual players on the Chargers defense, individual matchups on the Chargers defense, but nobody is scared of the team that, finished 22nd in scoring defense last year and 29th in Brandon Staley's first year. And it's time to change the narrative, and that's exactly what Derwin James is saying. He says, we definitely want to be that dominating group that we all know we can be. We've got the pieces to do it. We've got the guys to change that narrative, and that's just going to be a huge, part of what the Chargers season looks like this season. Their success, their team success is going to have so much to do with, can this group, like I said yesterday, be above average, right? I mean, they were 22nd last year. That just means getting better than 17th, right? Yeah. That's where the line is as far as being average, just getting a competent defense. And when this team did well last year, as Miller points out, it was on the back of their defense on that 4-game winning streak, David. This is the time to change the narrative, and they do have all the pieces to do it. We know Brandon Staley has been a good defensive game planner in the past. The players still have to go out and execute it, though.
Yeah, I think last year the Chargers obviously went out and spent a lot of money to try to put together the type of defense that they need to go orchestrate the Brandon Staley style of defense. But I feel like it was at that point in time, it was just too many different pieces. A lot of stars, but not a lot of continuity. And I think now that you have another year in the system, you have mostly the same guys in their positions. and fully healthy for the most part. Being able to take a full off season to be able to get into that playbook, to get really a lot more comfortable so that they can go out there and play fast, because I think now they have all the pieces that they need and they have the continuity as well. So I feel like that's going to pay dividends on the football field.
And where that continuity we are hoping really shows itself the most is in the run defense, because the Chargers have been really, not just were, the worst run defense in the league, right? There hasn't been many teams worse, and that was a pre-Brandon Staley issue. It's been a Brandon Staley issue. It's been a Chargers issue over the last decade. I can't remember the last time they have been a really good run-stopping team. I mean, I started to go back, and it was just too many years where I had to give up on it. But it starts in run defense. We talked with Braden Fehoko, the Chargers defensive tackle last year, who's now with the Steelers, and he told us how important the run fits are in this defense. If the run defense is still as bad as it was last season and the year prior, like, it's just hard to imagine things taking a much bigger step and being good defensively.
They can't. I mean, they absolutely cannot, because this Chargers defense, the too high safety shell, the way it's constructed is to limit the explosive plays and kind of invite the opposing teams to run the football against lighter boxes. Like, that's what they're trying to have you do. But the Chargers have to be able to stop the run so that defense can really work to its full capacity. And so they haven't been able to do that. They were historically bad against the run last year, giving up almost 5.5 yards per carry. That's two rushes equaling more than a first down. It's like that. You just cannot play defense that way. I mean, you're inviting the death by 1,000 paper cuts. Well, guess what? They did that to you a lot last year. So you have to improve in that game, and it's all about being connected at every level. You have to make sure that everybody's on the same page in playing run support. It's not just the defensive line. It's everybody involved playing together to be able to improve this run defense.
Yeah, and the defensive tackles were far from the worst problem last year as far as the run defense goes. That's what's so frustrating, I think, with they talking about narratives. The narrative is the Chargers' defensive tackles are rather bad at stopping the run, which it plays a part. Of course it does. Where the Chargers gave up most of their big runs last year was on the outside, on the perimeter, testing the tackling in the secondary, testing guys like, Asante Samuel Jr. wasn't tackling well. Nazir Adderley had some of those issues as well. Louis Gilman at times. J.C. Jackson, Michael Davis was like one of the better tackling people in that secondary, and he was a total atrocity at one point in his career trying to stop the run. So it starts there, and we'll get more into that later, just because the one thing in the run defense that really made no sense was how many explosive plays not only you were giving up in the run game, but in the passing game as well. And it starts with the tackling, it starts with group tackling, and so much more. But the one player they're kind of banking on to help make a big difference in that regard, David, is Eric Kendricks, the only big splash the Chargers made in free agency this year. And I think when you're looking at what the players have said about Eric Kendricks, I think they're kind of showing you exactly where they think he's going to be an upgrade over former linebacker Drew Tranquill.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this comes straight from the former All-Pro Khalil Mack's mouth here. He says you can tell he's been holding defenses down for a long time. To have that experience in the middle is going to work wonders for us, especially in the running game. Yeah. And I think when you think about Eric Kendricks, you just think of a guy who has played a lot of football, has played it at the highest level, has a really, really strong ability to communicate and make sure people are aligned and in the right spots, which we've seen be a major reason why that run defense and defense just in general did not play up to its potential, because they weren't in the right situations. I feel like that's going to get mitigated a little bit, with his presence in the middle. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to make everyone around him better. And I just like the fact of having kind of all pros at every level. You got Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack at the beginning. I know Joey's not an all-pro, but then you got Eric Kendricks in the middle, and you got Derwin James on the back end. So you have stars, and J.C. Jackson as well. Yeah, you got stars at every level of your defense, and if they're able to stay connected, and if Eric Kendricks is the guy to do that, then watch out. I mean, the pieces are definitely in place, and they expect Eric Kendricks to pay off big time.
Staying connected is so important. Filling the right gaps is so important. I mean, he's been praised for his communication constantly throughout the offseason, which is huge for the guy who's going to be the green dot in this defense. And also, just as far as other upgrades of what they've been missing, very good tackler with good range, veteran in coverage with good instincts and route recognition. And I think that with Eric Kendricks, you're hoping for a lot. And I think a lot of what he's going to bring to the table isn't even going to show up in the stat sheet. But I'm a believer. But as far as the run defense in general, we're going to have to see it. I mean, you can say it, you can talk about it all you want until we actually see them go out and are tackling to the ground. We're not going to know how much that unit has improved. But that is not the only concern we have for this team, because one of the biggest wild cards, I think, on this team is just what they're going to get from J.C. Jackson. Because last year, when he was out there, he wasn't great. And he also missed 12 games last year as well. So can they get more out of J.C. Jackson? Can they stop the explosive plays that absolutely killed them in 2022? We're going to get into that coming up right after this. First, though, I do need to tell you guys about Harry's Razors, because no matter why you shave, Harry's has you covered for the best shave of your life at a price you love. And there's really nothing I love more than saving money. I will save money anywhere that I obviously possibly can, but especially with shaving, if I'm going to get razors, I want to get the best price on them, and that's where Harry's really comes through clutch. And every time you've seen David totally shave his face and get all the compliments about his beautiful soft skin, it's always with Harry's Razors. So we appreciate the everydayers for that. But I'm usually terrible with razors and cut myself while cleaning up my neckline, because I do have to maintain this. It does come with some trimming and shaving as well. But with Harry's, with that starter set, I've never had any of those problems. And right now, you can get a starter set, a $13 value for only $3 when you subscribe, and they can refill deliveries for as low as $2, which is half of what you pay for other blades. Harry's also makes skincare products that will give you the best shave ever, and skincare products just to keep your skin looking nice on your face, because when you have a beard like I do and you have a wife, you better make sure that skin is really nice on your face. That's what I use Harry's for as well. Creams, washes, lotions, whatever you can use from Harry's to keep that skin healthy, they're going to have, and it works great. Right now, guys, you can get that $13 starter set from Harry's for just $3 at harrys.com/NFL. That's harrys.com/NFL for that $3 starter set. David, let's get into some of the other things that are concerning us about this Chargers defense, because it doesn't stop with the run defense. And I think when you have as many issues as the Chargers have had defensively over the last couple of seasons, there's no one end all be all.
It's never just one thing.
Yeah. There's never, there's multiple levels to it, multiple layers to it. One of the biggest X factors is J.C. Jackson. Brandon Staley and this team showed you how important they thought J.C. Jackson was by going out and spending the money that they did on him while, not really doing that very often. That was a huge signing for the Chargers, especially to bring in someone else and not to pay one of their own players. It's guys like Corey Linsley and guys like J.C. Jackson. But we just don't know, David, what we're going to get from J.C. Jackson, and I think that looms large while I'm thinking about this defense trying to improve.
Well, especially, it's hard to imagine the Chargers reaching their potential on defense without some form of J.C. Jackson returning to prominence. Yeah. I mean, not obviously back to his 8-9 interception days. Who knows if he's going to be able to reclaim that
I don't
form.
think we're seeing that in 2023.
Right.
I'll go on a limb and say we're not seeing the Patriots version. Yeah.
No, but I don't even expect that. And honestly, necessarily, the Chargers don't really even need that version of him. If he does, great. That would be fantastic. But even if we get a 75-80% version of that J.C. Jackson, then that still makes a huge difference. I mean, this is a guy who throughout his career has locked down number one wide receivers every year that he's been in the NFL. And the way that the Chargers coaching staff has spoken about him, they expect him to go out there and do that again. And so we'll have to see how he's recovered from this injury. I still feel like the Chargers are probably going to ease him back in. I don't think he's going to play a full, complete slate right away. Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, I think that they might kind of work him in a little bit in an effort to kind of protect him, just because, hey, this is an injury that we've seen claim careers from other players. So they definitely need to make sure that he's ready to go. And they kind of hold him back and kind of save him from himself a little bit so that they can keep some longevity for J.C. Jackson. But if he's able to reclaim some of that form, watch out.
Yeah, I think the hard thing is we did have, only limited exposure to him in training camp, because he did have, as Daniel Popper put it, a setback that made him miss, I think, 10 days of practice, or at least 10 straight days during training camp. It's almost impossible to know what version of J.C. Jackson you're going to get, because the thing is just getting healthy would be one thing, but it's also just getting healthy with what we saw from him last year, and we just don't know how much the injuries were part of how bad he was when he was on the field last year, and that's the impossible thing to know. The good news is they should get a really, really good idea going up against the Dolphins this weekend with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So I think a lot of the questions will be answered then. But 2 pass breakups and 4 touchdowns allowed in 2023. Or 2022. That's a very oversimplified way to show that it wasn't great. But
Well, and
It's
the
also
first
very
year,
true.
he never had any interceptions as well. 0 interceptions.
Yeah,
for
and
the
0
first time.
interceptions as well. But I do think, if he's good enough to go, like corner's not usually a position that you're, playing in a rotation, right? They said, hey, we think he's going to be able to go out there and take the other team's number one receiver away. They didn't say, hey, we hope that he can do it for
That's true.
75% of the game, right? Maybe that is what it'll look like. Maybe they feel good about, Asante Samuel Jr. obviously going on the outside and Jasir Taylor going in the star, because that's kind of the backup plan, right? If it doesn't work out with J.C. Jackson, Zomp moves out to the outside, then you're putting in second-year corners Jasir Taylor into the slot at that star position. We would see what that looks like, and I think you feel better about it this year than you did last year, but still. I think the other big thing with this Chargers defense, David, is limiting the explosive plays, because when you were talking earlier about Brandon Staley running the white boxes and things like that, it was funny just because I remember his quote on it was something along the lines of, it takes a lot of 5-yard runs to make a 60-yard pass, or something along that same, in that nature.
Right.
Unless you're just giving up 60-yard runs. And the Chargers, I think, gave up 40-yard runs in 6 straight games last year. They gave up a ton of explosive plays, not just in the running game, but also in the passing game as well. And that'll be a big part of this defense can improve. And I think one of the things that should be concerning us, because it was such a problem last season.
Well, they're backbreaking, Daniel. It's just as simple as that. Those type of plays, they steal the momentum away from you. Any momentum that you generate, the other team, that definitely sends electricity through what they're doing. And momentum is real. It sways over to the other side, and those are the type of plays that are hard to recover from. So, limiting the explosive plays for the Chargers defense is a massive, massive key for how they're going to be able to have success this year. I mean, they cannot do that again. Absolutely cannot allow those 30, 40-yard runs. And you have to hope that, the tackling on the outside, by the corners and the safeties are going to improve, because they were a large part of why a lot of those explosive plays were able to happen in the first place.
I think a lot of it's about finishing plays. Like the tackling is where it starts. Running game, even, passing game, whatever. Tackling has to be so much better than what we've seen. And that's better angles and rallying to the football. One thing that helps miss tackles is if you have another guy there to make the tackle after the first guy, right?
Multiple hats.
But getting more from the secondary in general to stop normal runs from turning into huge gains, right? And I think just setting a more physical edge. You have Bosa and Mack bulking up this offseason to be more physical presences on the edge. And then as far as the passing game goes, this secondary just has to stay more connected. We'll see how much Eric Kendricks plays a role in that, but it's going to be on this back end to not have the amount of broken plays and things like that we saw from them last year. Too many broken coverages, too many big plays allowed in the passing game, too many guys not being able to make plays in that deep part of the field and turning into huge plays. It just can't happen if this defense wants to be better. But I think another big thing the Chargers will be relying on this year, David, is the non-Derwin James safeties, right? I mean, those are two big concerns for me going into the season, or at least two big question marks. More concerned about JT Woods and Alohi Gilman, but the Chargers are going to be relying on both of those guys on the back end this season.
Yeah, Alohi Gilman is the first time that he's going to be the unquestioned starter next to Derwin James, so we'll have to see how he takes that responsibility, if he's going to be able to be consistent week in and week out. And then for JT Woods, it's very simple. Are you going to be able to go out there and tackle in space and be that last line of defense type of defender so that they can move Derwin James around and get creative? I mean, those are going to be the questions that they're going to have to answer.
Absolutely. And JT Woods is going to play as that guy that comes in when Derwin James is moving around to other positions. And Alohi Gilman, we just have such a small sample size. Obviously, he had his kind of big moment against the Dolphins in that game last year where he kind of came onto the scene and became the starter going down the stretch of the season. Now we have to see it for a full season. He's looked good. The Chargers have sung his praises, but we know that's only worth so much, right? You can only put so much weight into that. I think the last wild card is just the rookies. What are the Chargers going to get from the 3 defenders they added? Because really all they added besides that was Nick Williams and Eric Kendricks. Thule, who could become a starter at some point this season. Deion Henley obviously injured right now, but is going to be a core special teams player. And Scott Matlock should be in the rotation right away. But if this defense is going to improve, David, the rookies are going to have to bring some to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited about Thule. I think his skill set is going to translate pretty much immediately. I think you'll see him in some NASCAR packages. I think you'll see him, giving Joey and Khalil Mack a blow here and there, try to keep them fresh. And then I really like what Scott Matlock is going to bring to the table. I mean, adding to that defensive line rotation, that motor, it's beautiful. And I think it fits perfectly for the Chargers defensive line room.
And I think the other reason it's a concern, too, because when you rely on rookies, you're going to have to deal with the rookie learning curve and the rookie mistakes, which are going to happen. So I think, it's all going to be a process. Scott Matlock, inconsistent, but definitely showed some flashes. Tuli, I think the nice thing there is you get another physical edge presence after Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. Not what you get with Chris Rumph, who I thought had his best offseason I've ever seen from him, especially heated up down the stretch. But still, you want somebody that's going to be physical. That tackle for loss that he had against the Saints, right, just beating Trevor Penning quickly, making a tackle in the backfield, those big wins defensively are something this Chargers team has sorely lacked. Tuli brings some of those skills, some of those tools to the table. So I'm excited to see it, but the Chargers are going to need those rookies to contribute in some way. Injuries happen, and as far as trying to be better, those are really the only guys that are coming in as far as new players that you can hope for in a different, outcome with the same defense for the most part, even with that continuity. But offensively for me, can Justin Herbert finally get a running game? Because he hasn't had one throughout his career so far. And Kellen Moore, I think, is a good reason to feel like they could actually get much better in that regard on offense. Still a concern going into the season, just like third quarter and red zone scoring, two things that were awful under former offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi. So we're going to rehash and rip those Band-Aids off again, coming up right after this. First, though, I do need to tell you guys about the Game Time app because it's the only place I'm buying my tickets for any kind of event now. This is something that I use all the time now because I found out about it, and it's just, I don't know if I could ever go back to any other kind of ticketing service because buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy your tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. I used it to get some concert tickets not that long ago, and the biggest game changer for me, right when I clicked on the ticket, it showed me exactly what the view is going to be, right? That is huge. You do not want to be behind a pole or have a terrible view, be stuck in a corner behind a TV monitor or something like that. It can ruin your whole experience, and Game Time is all about you having a great experience and also the best place to get last-minute ticket deals. The Game Time guarantee also means that you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. That's how committed they are to you getting the best price on your last-minute deal. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, David, well, let's get back into this. Before that, though, I do need to tell you guys to make sure you're checking out the ultimate divisional crossover that's happening right now on the Locked On NFL channel. And you can find it on our channel as well for some of those shows, hashing it out with the rest of the AFC West and just having the Chargers back. But all 32 local hosts getting on there and talking about the biggest question in each division going on right now. But let's get to the offense, David, because I think there are some concerns here. And this next one isn't really a big concern for me because I think I've bought in on it. But one of the things that has plagued this offense in years past, specifically in the 27-0 blown lead in the playoffs against the Jaguars, not being able to run the football. David doesn't want me to bring that one up again. I'm sorry. But this has plagued the Chargers. Justin Herbert's never really had a lethal rushing attack, David. And I think it's one of the biggest questions going into this year is just how much better can this rushing unit be?
I mean, it can't be much worse. I mean, the Bolts finished 30th in the NFL in rushing yards per game, averaging only 88.4. Chargers rushing EPA per play was 19th at minus 0.078. Yards per carry was at 3.77, and they were 29th in explosive plays with only 37. Also, the Bolts were 31st with only 395 rushing yards before contact, and were 27th overall with just 91 first downs gained. So, no, it can't be much worse. As far as efficiency numbers, the Chargers did not get it done. They could not run the football when the other team was expecting them to. They couldn't run the football at all. They just didn't have any identity. They had a couple of successful plays here and there, but I think that's what I'm looking forward to the most is Kellen Moore bringing a more north and south rushing style that's going to jive more with the Chargers offensive linemen and the type of running backs that they have, and just going to have a stable of plays that they can go out there and use and know they're going to be successful with them.
And the crazy thing about the Chargers in years past, at least under Joe Lombardi, is like a lot of those stats are really inflated by a couple of really good games, right? Like a random 200-yard performance against the Browns, a random 200-yard performance of the shell of the Super Bowl champion Rams last year. I mean, those two games really skewed those numbers, and they were still 30th in basically every category, just to kind of show you how bad everything was. Couldn't skew it enough. But they only this preseason, I think, was reason for hope. 201 yards per game in the preseason. The Chargers put out a post and showed that it was the most since 2001. And I did the math, and in 2021 and 2022, They averaged 72.5 rushing yards per game. So over 125 more rushing yards per game in the
That'll
preseason.
play.
I mean, the thing is we never put much stock into it when it was Joe Lombardi, but I think you could see, okay, well, good schemes matter a lot, right? And even if you don't have your starters out there, if you're running the right things, if you have a bread and butter like Kellen Moore
still be productive.
you can still be productive. And I think the big thing here, David, too, trying to finish games, being able to finish games consistently, right? I mean, going along with the stats that you obviously brought up, the Chargers aren't explosive. They don't have any back-breaking runs, right? They're not demoralizing teams with big explosive plays. They were 30th and 20-plus yard runs last year. And if you want to stop blowing leads, getting good at running the football is going to be huge. The Cowboys had the 8th most rushing yards last year, 22nd in yards per carry, but I think that was really just kind of dragged down by Ezekiel Elliott's 3.7 yards per carry. But I believe in Josh Kelly and Isaiah Spiller. I know there's big questions about those guys, small sample sizes. And, really, really small sample size for Isaiah Spiller, who's, I think, the wild card of the group. I believe in those guys. I've seen a lot. I think both of those guys can be NFL-level running backs this year. And it's really been hard to find that after Austin Eckler in years past, to where last year the Chargers went out and got Sony Michel because they didn't feel good.
I mean, Eckler was begging for it. No, give me some competition, please.
Yeah, has been, right? But let's get into scoring in the third quarter and scoring in the red zone, David. I think two things that were, thorn in the side of the Chargers last season, and two places we're expecting improvement under Kellen Moore.
Yeah, absolutely. The Chargers finished 2022 29th in the league in third quarter scoring, averaging a measly 2.9.
It's insane that they weren't the worst. It is truly mind-boggling to me with what we saw in the third quarter last year that the Chargers weren't the worst. They went 4 games scoring 0 points in a row in the third quarter. They went 10 games where they didn't score a touchdown in the third quarter. The fact that there's teams that are worse than that, that's mind-boggling, honestly.
Yeah, and of course, if you were listening to this podcast or watching this podcast last year, then you heard us complain about it week over week.
Bringing up all these same things, all these same emotions.
But one thing you can be a little bit optimistic about is that Dallas was a lot better at it. Dallas was 5th in third quarter points scored, scoring 6.1 points per game in the third quarter. So they
over
were
twice as much,
Yeah, exponentially better. And then scoring in the red zone, I mean, the Chargers were 18th in the league in red zone touchdown percentage, only scoring a touchdown every 54.55% of the time. Dallas was number 1 and scoring a touchdown at 71.43% of their red zone trips. So there is a lot of reason for optimism for both of those numbers to improve greatly under Kellen Moore this season.
Yeah, we did see some red zone struggles during training camp, right? That is one place where hopefully, and when the real games start, Justin Herbert will be using his legs a little bit more in that area too, and that's something that kind of straightens things out. I think Keenan Allen could have a sneaky year in the red zone this year too. Let's get to the last thing here, David, because like defensively, offensively, the big addition for the Chargers was Quentin Johnston, and I think the rookies between him and Darius Davis, what their role is going to be on offense is another kind of place where you'll see, okay, this team can improve offensively with Kellen Moore, but as far as personnel goes, as far as skill players goes, what Quentin Johnston is able to do this year seems to be very important.
Absolutely it is. And I think they're going to create situations for Quentin Johnston to use his yards after catch ability to great success because he turns into a running back with the ball in his hands. He forced 45 missed tackles across 3 seasons at TCU. So he's dangerous. He's dynamic in that. And he doesn't have to feel the stress of being the number 1 guy because Keenan and Mike is going to do that. He can kind of come in and they can set up plays for him and really breed some confidence. And then Darius Davis is going to be your gadget guy. And I think this year the difference is those gadget plays are going to look like they're supposed to look because you have a real speed threat to be able to orchestrate those type of plays. And not just speed, but agility and quickness as well. So, and also, honestly, I want to see them send him deep a couple of times too because he does have the speed just, a couple times just to keep the defense honest. I would like to see that. Get your
leading punt returner and kick returner killed. I mean, I don't know. I'm not expecting.
I didn't say you had to throw it to him. Just go deep.
I'm not expecting much in terms of production from Darius Davis on offense. I'm just not. I mean, I think the speed really shows up on the gadget plays. I mean, I showed in the preseason they can be a weapon offensively. I'm just not going to be really. I don't think they're going to risk him because he's going to be so important to their special teams. I don't think we see him on the field much offensively unless there's injuries. But I think injuries are the other reason why Quentin Johnston is so important because another reason besides just his explosiveness and being the best yak threat was to have less of a drop-off if Keenan Allen goes down. if Mike Williams goes down, to have another guy where you don't see the drop-off and have guys like Jason Moore and Michael Bandy getting on the field. So that's going to be huge for me. I'm excited about it, but we'll see what that production ends up looking like. That is going to wrap things up for today's show. Make sure you are back here tomorrow for the first crossover Thursday of the season. We're so excited about it. Locked On Chargers, Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you are subscribing or following for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listening wherever you get your podcast from so you guys don't miss it tomorrow. But until then, make sure you're also following our social media on X or Twitter at Locked On LAC. You can find me on there at Dan Talk Sports and David Drogemeyer at Dro Talk SD. You can also find us on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page, where we post the show every single day. You can always find the show on all of those places. But it's getting real. Crossover Thursday tomorrow. Make sure you guys are back here for that. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.